guys, I'm Renee. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing with you how I do my concealer. So this technique is basically going to be concealer only in the areas that I need. So this is not this is a technique that I do usually just for my everyday makeup, not like for you know, when I'm doing a real glamorous look, or if I'm going to an event or something. Obviously I probably would do something a little bit more heavy, but this look is a concealer look that I do on my face usually for every day. And what I love about this technique is that it lets my skin breathe. So I wanted to share this technique with you. So basically it's going to be only using concealer, and we're going to be using a powder to set, and then we're going to use our bronzer as our contour. So basically it's just a very light look, but I love it. It lets my skin breathe. I find I have less blemishes from it. I feel like I don't have this heaviness on my face. This is really great for people who don't like wearing a lot of makeup for every day, and I'm one of those people. For everyday makeup, I just want something light, something easy, especially for work and for other, you know, like casual outings. I just want something that is low maintenance. So I am going to be sharing with you the products that I use along the way, and yeah, I'll probably do like a little light makeup look just for you to see what you could do on yourself, or when you're just going out somewhere casual. So just keep in mind, this is a very light makeup look, and the whole point of this technique is we don't want anything that's heavy or anything that's going to drag down our skin. So that's the whole point of me doing this concealer technique. So one thing to keep in mind, for this technique I usually use one concealer that's one shade lighter than my skin and one shade darker than my skin. So it's really important that you can find a concealer or mix a concealer that's in your tone, that's one shade lighter than your skin and one shade darker than your skin. So now if you don't have that, not everyone's lucky enough to have a concealer, you know, multiple concealers around of different shades. So if you don't have that, what you could do is you could use a color that's equivalent to your skin. But I do recommend, if you are doing a concealer that is equivalent to your skin tone, like say you only have one concealer on you, make sure to have like the powder that matches very close to your skin. You know, don't use something that's too light or too dark, because it can throw off that concealer that's equivalent to your skin, especially if you're using a powder that's too dark. It can make that concealer come out dark looking, or like shadowy, like dark shadows of it under for this technique anyways. So I'm gonna get started. Thanks again for joining me. So before I start this video, I'm going to do my eyebrows. You can stay tuned for one of my other videos that I have where I do my eyebrows, and yeah, I'm just going to do that first. And right now I have no makeup on. I just have a Neutrogena SPF 60. I use that pretty often just to keep my skin protected underneath any makeup or powder looks I have. Okay, so now that my eyebrows are set, I'm going to be sharing with you the kit that I'm going to be using. I'm fortunate enough to have a set that has more than a few colors to choose from. So I'm going to be using the Revolution's London Makeup Cover and Conceal palette. So you got about 8 shades there for you to choose from. So in this, I actually have my shades pre-mixed because I need something that matches. None of these are like equivalent to my skin. One is quite close, but I like to mix up my own to really get into the tone of my skin. So just keep in mind, remember, it's just one shade lighter and one shade darker that I'm going to be using for this technique. So I'm going to be using 2 brushes for this technique. for the concealer, and one is my little e.l.f. mini brush. It's so cute. It's really good for just if you're trying to cover little tiny spots along your face. And I'm going to be using this Sephora flat brush. It's very I love using it. I've had this for years and I love it. So it's flat, and I use it for my eyebrows too, just when I'm blending in my foundation at the top of my forehead and for sharpening my line of my eyebrow. So first we're going to start with that concealer that's one shade lighter than my skin. If you have a very deep or dark mark, you can actually go 2 shades lighter than your skin, and then you can also go 2 shades darker with your concealer then, so that the two will even out evenly. But in this case, I'm just going to do something light and simple, and it's just going to go 1 shade up on my skin. So right now we're going to go into that shade that's 1 shade up for my skin, and I'm going to cover all those marks. And the whole point of this technique is that we want to let the skin breathe. So we're not going to be putting concealer all over the face. We're only going to put it in the areas that we need it. So that's the whole point of this video, is to let the skin breathe, not overpile it with concealer or foundation or the heaviness of that all. I'm going to go in with my beauty blender. I dampened it a bit, and we're going to just blend those in. Now, some people may be wondering, why am I going 1 shade lighter and then going 1 shade darker when they're both going to go equivalent to my skin tone? Well, the reason why I find that works better than just getting a concealer that's equivalent to your skin is that I find when you get a concealer that's equivalent to your skin, a lot of times you'll still see the undershadows of your dark circles or that mark underneath. And people of my complexion, usually, when we get a mark, it tends to go at least even almost 2 to 3 shades darker than our skin. So something that matches equivalent to our skin doesn't always work. If it does work, you usually have to pile it on, or get something that's pretty thick for it to work, which is fine. But if you're like me, who just wants to wear something really light and doesn't want to have to pile it on, and especially for this technique where we don't want that cakiness, especially when I'm going to be applying my powder after, we want something that's going to be light. And I found, for me, what worked was just going 1 shade lighter in my skin. The shade lighter would help this, and then when it would help diminish that mark, it would make that mark almost more translucent, so that when I put that shade that's 1 shade darker than my skin, it would go nice and even. It would just mold into my skin better. And then when I applied my powder, everything just blended in really well. So that's the only reason why I suggest going 1 shade lighter if you can. Now that we've gone 1 shade lighter, we can't walk around with our face looking like with these little white marks. So that's why it's important to go the shade darker now, because that's going to even that out. And another thing that people can do is, if you've got really deep marks, you can go 2 shades lighter, and then you can go 2 shades darker. and then you get that same equivalency of getting that evenness, and you don't get that, you don't have to worry about piling it up on with like a concealer that's equivalent to your skin, where you have to layer it thickly on to even out your skin. So that's one of the other things that's great about this technique, is that you don't have to worry about the heaviness. You're just making your marks diminish by just going a few shades lighter and then going a few shades darker. Now, the problem with just having a shade that's one shade lighter than your skin is you can't walk around with these white marks. Even if you put your powder on, it's still going to show and highlight these white marks on your face. So that's why it's important to have the shade that's one shade darker than your skin, and that just evens everything out, and then you're not left with that undershadow or that mark still showing through. I'm sure you've all seen that when you put your concealer that matches your skin and you're like, oh, well, I still see that mark, those marks under my skin. Oh, why, like, you know, and you end up piling on more. Where here you can just, if you just go a shade lighter, it helps diminish that mark a little bit better. It may show through on a lot of people still, but I find it just diminishes it a lot better, and then when I apply that shade that's 2 shades darker, it just evens out nicely. Now we're going to take my flatter brush, my bigger brush, and we're going to do the same for underneath my eyes. It's really important to blend really well as well. Okay, so now that we have this shade that's 1 shade lighter on our skin, I'm going to go in with my shade that's 1 shade darker on my skin. Now we're going to cover all those marks that we had that were 1 shade lighter on our skin with this shade that's 1 shade darker on our skin. Make sure that, especially for underneath the eye circles, that you didn't blend something like 2 or 3 shades darker. Try to stick to something that's 1, or the max is like, if you're going 2 shades up, then obviously you have to go 2 shades down, but if it's 1 shade up, make sure that you only have 1 shade down from your eyes, because we don't want underneath your eyes to get darkened. So now we're going in with that shade that's 1 shade darker for underneath the eyes. So I did want to go a little up close for you to see it, how it's blended. Next, for this look, to set it, we're going to be using a powder, and my powder I'm going to be using is my Maybelline Fit Me in Medium Deep by New York. Powder, I'm going to be using my Urban Studio brush. And what is great about this technique is the reason why it's really important to have a moisturizer on before you start this is because we're going to be using that moisturizer as almost like a sealage with the powder together, and it's almost going to make this light, what do you call it, like almost like a light powder foundation. So that's why it's really important to have a moisturizer on for this. So if you're looking to set underneath your eyebrows, I usually, like for instance, because I did my eyebrows in advance, I like to set them. So I use a smaller brush, and that's my IT Cosmetics brush, and I'm going to use that just dip it in the powder. So I'm going to dip this in the powder, and I use that just to set my eyebrows a little bit, you know, get something a little closer to set my eyebrows or underneath my eyes. Now for contour, I'm going to be just using this Renae Stay Matte powder, and I mean, it's a powder, but I use it as a bronzer as well. It's very matte. It's in Toffee 025. This is what I'm going to be using as my contour, and I find it gives my skin a bit of a glow as well. So for this bronzer, I'm going to be using my IT Cosmetics brush. It's really soft, the bristles on this brush, by the way. Now I'm just going to go in there. Always really blend in near your hairline. There's nothing worse than having your hairline look very fair or not blended. Contour my nose a bit. Cheeks. Chin. So once you use your bronzer, it just warms up the skin, and it makes everything, all those concealer areas, really just blend in and melt into your skin, that no marks of lightness will show, or darkness or anything. So I do want to show you a bit of a finished look, so I'm going to go in with that same bronzer and contour around my eyelids a bit, and very close to the lash line in the corner. So I am going to go in with this Sculpt and Glow Highlight Contour Blush and Bronzer Kit, and I'm going to go into this rose color, and there's a little bit of a contouring blush I'm going to use just to contour my cheeks a little more. So I'm going to go into that. And I'm going to go into this rose and this peachy shade just for my cheeks, to highlight my cheeks a little more. So I do want to define my eyes a bit. So we're going to use this Scandalous Volume On Demand Rimmel London mascara. I like the brush because it's pretty big. So that means most likely really big, voluminous lashes, which is what I love. See, look how a little mascara can open up your eyes so much. So for my lips, I'm just going to be putting on this Burt's Bees Cucumber Mint Chapstick, and I'm going to be using just a very light lip liner, I should say, and it's by RK Perfect Precision in red wine. So it's RK by Kiss. So we blended in this auto lip liner in Cocoa by Ruby Kisses, and I'm just going to put a little more. We take in the corners. I like to take in the corners, the bottom edges of my mouth, because there's just always been wider on my lip. And then I make a little line in the middle and at the top, just to give a little contour. And I blend. Okay, so this is my finished look. I just wanted to share a different technique with you of how to do your concealer for every day. So I hope this technique works for you as it works for me. Thanks so much for joining me. Please do give me a thumbs up, and please do subscribe to my channel. I will be having some more upcoming videos. Thanks again for joining me. Bye.